welcome back to In the House podcast. How's it going, Jenny?
I'm great. How are you doing, Tony?
I'm doing okay. We have a really special guest on and a special episode for you guys and gals that are listening today. We've spoken a lot on the podcast about finding that work-life harmony that so many of us are after.
We've brought this up so many times, almost every episode, to be honest.
It's true. So definitely a need for it. And our special guest today is Deborah Stellingwerff. She is I guess it's work-life coach.
I would say so. I mean, her background is in English Lit.
Yes.
She was teaching for 15 years, but also reason why she is great at what she does is because she used to be an agent as well.
Exactly.
So she understands our lifestyle.
Exactly. And what my key takeaway, I had two from the session. The first one was she called it living in your genius, which was, I thought, really powerful. And also defining success on your own terms, which people sometimes talk about, but there's a difference between talking about it and discovering what that is. How about for you? What did you find, I guess, the most titillating about the episode today?
Setting boundaries. I think that's the most recent thing that I've done is learning to say no and not feeling guilty for saying no. So
absolutely.
This guest was introduced to us by a previous guest of ours, Patty Glass. And so we really appreciate Patty for forwarding us her information. But I really learned a lot about this session that we really need to feel like there's that point of no return where we get to that pushes us to make impactful decisions. And so what I found from this conversation is that don't do it so late. In your gut, in your intuition, and if you are feeling that you're not fulfilled, is to make decisions right away or seek help so that you know where you need to, or have a guidance so that you know where you need to go. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So without further ado, Deborah Stellingwerff.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to In the House podcast with Jenny and Tony. We have a super special guest today. We have been continually talking about work-life balance and succeeding at a productive level on all spheres of life. So our special guest today is Deborah Stellingwerff. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Perfectly.
Perfect. And Deborah brings a really diverse background in business and education to coaching her coaching practice. You have quite an interesting history, jack of all trades. You also used to run a real estate practice, or you used to, Remax Select?
That's correct.
Okay, wonderful. So you're in a great position to be coaching all kinds of people, it sounds like. Why don't you give us a little bit more about your background? And you are working on something really interesting, which is your Stellar Life project. So why don't you give us your introduction, and then you can tell us a little bit more about your special project.
Well, wonderful. Thank you. It was an interesting story. You know, you never know where you're going to end up. I've always said that you just follow your passion and you will find your way. And my background is in education, as Tony mentioned. I was a high school English teacher for 15 years. And that was my second career. My first career was actually in the modeling industry. I was a talent scout for an international modeling agency, and I lived in Italy. So there was a little bit of sales and entrepreneurial spirit. And at the time, I actually just thought I was lazy because I didn't have a real job. So then I, came back and got a real job and went to university. And I really loved teaching. It was a passion for me. I love helping people see what's possible. This is why I love coaching, why I loved teaching. So I took that I see people's possibility and I combined it with my love of literature and language, and I made that my job. And it was fun, and I couldn't believe they paid me to do it. And then after 15 years of teaching, I still loved it. I was in a car accident. It was a minor car accident. Shouldn't have changed my life the way it did, but it did. We never know, right? And things kind of bump us into the next lane. Just some soft tissue damage in my shoulder, and I found out how much that's involved in your handwriting. And I was an IB English teacher. That's a lot of writing. And so I found after a while, I was like, I wasn't getting better. I realized the only time I'm not in pain is when I'm not marking. Oh, shoot. I think I might have to make a career change. And it was devastating. I was really grieving it. I thought, who am I going to be if I'm not a teacher? And it was a real struggle to make that transition. But my husband said to me, I'm afraid you're going to die.
Oh,
wow.
And I thought, you're being ridiculous. And, but my husband's not ridiculous and he's not overly dramatic. And when I stepped back, looking back, I understand why he said that, because he could see the toll of chronic stress and chronic pain that was having on me. And you don't realize it when you're in it, how it's impacting your life and how it's impacting the people around you. Because teaching's stressful. I loved it, but it's stressful. There's always the pressure of deadlines and more marking and more kids and bigger classes and all the things that come with it. And even imagine, I have a lot of teacher friends who right now during the pandemic, it's so stressful for them.
Yeah.
Above and beyond the normal stress of being a teacher. And I just had the normal stress of being a teacher, which was a lot. And interestingly enough, the way the universe kind of pops things into our worlds, right? About 4 months before the accident happened, we had done a buy and a sell, and our realtor, can I say her name?
Yeah, absolutely.
The wonderful Emily O, who is the Queen of Surrey, and she's just amazing.
She is an amazing realtor.
She said to me, you should be a realtor. You'd be really good at it. And I said, no, thanks. I just finished a master's degree and I love my job. But of course, 2 years later, chronic pain, et cetera. I was like, what about that real estate thing? So I called up Emily and we had a cup of tea and I decided I was going to give it a try. I'm going to fast forward this now. Long story short, Emily was right. I'm an awesome realtor. And I did really well, but it wasn't my zone of genius. And we've talked about that, right? Like I'm really good at it. I was definitely in my zone of excellence, doing what I'm good at, but I'm a teacher. And I want to teach people. And what I did is I threw myself into real estate, and because if I'm going to do anything, I'm going to do it really well. And I learned everything I could learn, and I had coaches and training, and I was everything I could do. And then I learned all this and I was like, it's working. Like, I want other people to know about this. And so I started leading mastermind groups and I started doing some training and that was just happening kind of in the background. And it didn't even occur to me yet that I could be a coach. In fact, I was a very reluctant coach. I had a lot of stories about what it meant to be a coach, which is funny because one of the first things that I did when I started real estate was I hired a coach. Because my mom gave me the best business advice I ever got was from my mom, who said, you invested in your first career. Why wouldn't you invest in this career?
Right.
And so I got myself a coach, and it made a huge difference. And when I got Rookie of the Year that first year, and one of my colleagues who'd been in the business a little bit longer than me said, oh, to what do you owe your success? Is it because you're a teacher and you're organized? I said, no, dude, I'm systematized. I have systems in place because I hired a coach who helped me to learn what I needed to do to be successful. Success leaves clues. You guys know that. You're successful in your real estate practices. You didn't reinvent the wheel. You ladies looked around and you said, oh, what works? Okay, we're going to take that. Right. And so that's what I did. But I brought with me my tendency to hyperachieve. Again, right, as a teacher and as everything I do, I want to do the extreme. And so I was getting burnt out.
But you were in your zone of excellence.
Yeah, I was in my zone of excellence. I was really good at it, right?
That was like 6 or 7 years.
Yeah. And I was getting burnt out. And part of that, what I realized is that I was looking outside of myself for what success was. I had done really well. I had looked outside, and in this coaching community I was a part of, there was this really elite mastermind group that you had to have a minimum annual income of $250,000 to be in this group. And I looked at that and I go, that's success. I'm going to do that. And I got into that group and I'm like, oh, well, it doesn't feel successful. It doesn't feel any different. Okay, well, I'm going to keep going with this group and maybe I'll, push harder and go higher and then I'll feel successful. And I pushed myself so hard that I actually burnt myself out, and I never felt successful. I was making 3 times the amount of money I'd made as a teacher, and from outside it looked really successful, and I didn't feel successful.
How many years in the practice were you in at this point when you felt burnt out?
About 5 years.
5 years in, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
5 years is that number, right? When you're just... I've learned this because I've had several careers now. 5 years is that magic place where to the point where you're like, okay, I got this, right? You've learned the basics, you've climbed the mountain, groove. You're in the groove. And I got there and I was like, oh, is this it? This is what I was going for? And I wasn't happy. I was burnt out. I'd pushed myself to the point where I was borderline diabetic because I wasn't eating on a regular basis. And so I started looking at how can I adjust my flow of my days, right? What can I bring in? And I started a yoga practice daily, and I started doing meditations, and I started bringing other things in, and I started, really reading into personal growth books, which I had always been a real snob about those kind of books, right? I have a master's degree in literature, you guys, right? And we're really snobby about anything that's not literature, right? Not high literature. And so I now I regret, because I spent so much of my life not accessing all that was available in the wisdom that is shared in the world of personal growth and personal development. I didn't read books like 7 Habits of Highly Effective People until within the last 10 years. Right. And wow, if everybody had read that in high school, what a world we'd live in, right? So it was...
So at that 5 years, you were burnt out, but what kind of feeling? Is it like your gut? Is it in your head? Is it... Because I'm sure I experienced it myself. What feeling does that person receive? Or vibe that they're in that state of, I don't know where I need to be now. Yeah. Where's my place in this business?
I love that question, Jenny, because our bodies are such a source of wisdom for us. And I went around ignoring my body for a long time, right? I had this injury that I wasn't treating. I had this heaviness that I wasn't dealing with. I was hungry all the time. And I thought, what is my problem? Well, it turns out when you're hungry all the time and you're losing weight, it's because you've got an issue with your blood sugar. So there's those things, there's those physical kind of feelings. But for me, what showed up is I had this overwhelming desire to lay on the floor. And there's a reason why in yoga, there's shavasana, which is like the corpse pose. You're laying on the floor, because it is a really grounding, healing place. And I really had this urge to just lay on the floor all the time. And there was this real heaviness. And I woke up in the morning every day thinking, I don't want to get out of bed. Right? I was so tired all the time. And I think when we're grinding and hustling for approval and defining success by other people's standards, like what's out there,
right,
it's draining. Yeah. And, Brené Brown used that term, hustling for approval, right? If we're defining our success by what's out there, whether it's the amount of money you have or the
making medallion club.
Right? That's a great story. Actually, I have a client who came to me stressed out, burnt out, exhausted, and feeling like she was a complete failure because she'd never achieved medallion. Yet she'd made some really specific choices about how she wanted to run her business so that it didn't interfere with her raising of her kids. And, by anyone else's standards, she was doing quite well, but she didn't have medallion, right? And that tortured her. So there's some mindset stuff to do. But yeah, again, it's external. Who cares about medallion? No. Yeah. I got it a few times, and people said, did you get medallion? I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I honestly never checked. right? The time I got it, I was like, oh, that's neat. Yeah. So, but I looked at other ways of defining my success on other people's terms. And that's exhausting.
So how did you start to, I guess, when you decided on, when you defined success on your own terms, what did that look like for you?
That was not easy because we're not trained to ask ourselves what we want. Mm-hmm.
Especially in this business, because the clients are our priority and it's on the spot, pick up the phone, and we have to be accessible 24/7.
Yes. Right. And that's one thing I learned about myself in real estate is like, I knew it was time for me to step back when I was getting resentful if somebody was interrupting my dinner plans because they wanted to buy a house.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I have clients, real estate clients, who they're realtors and they love it. They love the unpredictability and they get really excited about that. Whereas I'm like, I was just annoyed. I have concert tickets and you want to buy a house? Right. And so I knew this was not the right place for me. Mm-hmm. And for some people that spontaneity is fun. Mm-hmm. I learned about myself by doing it that that's not fun for me. So
let's talk about your transition from now your real estate practice over to coaching. Mm-hmm. How long did that process take and what made you, are you still licensed right now?
I just gave up my license a few months ago.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. And you're an in-house coach for RE/MAX Select?
Yes.
Realty.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I have my own private practice, which is where I spend most of my time actually.
Okay.
So the transition was interesting because I had a friend who said to me, you should be a coach. I'm like, nope, not doing it. And it was in the context that I had said to her, I read a book, and I think everybody should read this book. It's called The Big Leap by Dr. Gay Hendricks.
Yes.
I've heard about that book. I haven't read it.
Okay, that's your assignment.
Okay.
Is to read it because it changed my life because it asked the question. That's where I get that phrase, the zone of genius, because it asked the question, how much time are you spending in your zone of genius? And your zone of genius is that sweet spot where you're using your gifts and talents to their highest, best use, and you're inspired and energized. And when he asked that question, I was like, oh, that's what's wrong with me. This is why I want to lay on the floor all the time, because I'm not using my gifts as a teacher, which is really, it's a vocation for me, to teach. And when I learn something, I want other people to know about it, so that their lives can be better. And, I actually created a YouTube series called The Real Estate Classroom. It's not up anymore. I took it down.
Okay.
But I spent a ton of time doing that so that I could get out that need to teach. Mm-hmm. And I shared it with my clients, but then I had no interest in actually doing all the marketing that went with it. I just wanted to do that. And I realized, okay, I need to teach. So that was the turning point when I said to my friend who's a coach, if I were ever to become a coach, this is the philosophy I would use. Like, let's get people in their zone of genius so they're happy and energized and they inspire other people to do the same. And then the world becomes a better place. Mm-hmm. And she said, you should be a coach. I'm like, not doing it. Because with real estate, for me, I did really well, but it was hard. I mean, it's a grind, right? And you're working really hard to build a practice. And I learned along the way some ways to make it easier. And that's what I share with people when I'm coaching realtors. Eventually, I said to my real estate coach, who's one of the co-founders of the biggest coaching company in Canada, I said, what do I need to do to coach for your company? Mm-hmm. And he said to take the same training that my friend recommended. I was like, okay, fine. The universe is sending me a message. I only need 2 messages. I don't listen on the first time ever, it seems. So I went and took the training so that I could coach off the side of my desk. Because at that time, I was like, I am not starting another business. I'm just too exhausted. I was so burnt out and so worn out. And it was having my condition I was in was having an impact on my marriage and my family. And I thought, I can't take on anything else. But I can coach off the side of my desk. It'll satisfy that teacher in me. And within the first hour of the first day of training, I was like, oh, this is why I'm on the planet. This is what I should be doing. I had no idea what was available and how I could use my gifts as a teacher, as someone who absolutely loves language, and I'm fascinated by how the brain works. A lot of my studies when I was teaching was in brain-based learning. And so it's like brought all of this together. There's no way I could have been a business and personal leadership coach when I left teaching. I didn't have all the skills I needed. I had a lot of them, but I needed to learn how to run a business so that I can help other people do that.
Okay. So the coaching program that you took taught you how to run a coaching business because you already knew how to teach and mentor.
It taught me how to coach, because coaching is very different than teaching and mentoring. And I took a lot of training. I've invested very heavily. I've probably spent over $100,000 in my training and my personal coaching in the last 3 years as I've grown my coaching practice and I've grown myself as a coach. Again, it's like the advice of my mom: if you're going to do something, invest in yourself so that you can be the very best at it.
Absolutely. And now what's your company business called?
Deborah Stellingwerff Coaching.
Okay. Okay. Let's talk about the stress that agents go through in balancing their life, balancing clients. What are some of the things that we experience as agents that you find very common, and what most of your clients who are entrepreneurs and business leaders and high performers, what's the commonality that you're finding in this stress that we're creating for ourselves?
I love that question because that's so key. That's the biggest crisis. There's this global pandemic right now of COVID-19, but it's our second pandemic. Nobody's talked about the first one, which the World Health Organization announced a few years ago, that stress is a global pandemic. And it's causing so much suffering and so much burden on the healthcare system and on individuals and families. And so stress is such a big thing. And a couple of years ago when I was going through this transition myself, I came across a quote by Dr. Gabor Mate, who is a Vancouver doctor who deals with stress and addiction. And he talks about how we can become addicted to our own stress hormones. And when I saw that, I thought, I get shivers even now. It's like, holy crap, that's me. And that's a lot of people around me. And so
addicted. So we're looking to add stress.
Yes, because we get these dopamine hits, right? We get this hit of, it's
feeling like we're needing fulfillment in other ways.
Yes. And so our stress hormones, we get addicted to them. And so we create stress in our lives where it's not entirely necessary. And part of that has to do with the fact that we are wired for threat. So if we look at us from a prehistoric historical point of view of our brains, right? Like, we have evolved as a species so fast. We're sitting here in a studio. We've got somebody on a Jetsons screen over here. Did you guys know that reference? The Jetsons?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Right,
yes,
the cartoon. Like, we're sitting in this room and we have, Tony's not even in the room with us, but she's here and we're doing the filming together. And we have this technology and we've advanced so much. And yet we still have this really prehistoric ancient part of our brain that is wired to keep us alive. Our brains are not just designed to make us successful, right? They're not designed to make us successful. They're designed to keep us safe.
Right.
So research has shown us that there's a 3-to-1 ratio of negative to positive thoughts. So we're constantly scanning the horizon for threat. And we don't have saber-toothed tigers lurking around to have us for lunch, right? Like we did in the past. So our brains find other things to stress about and to identify as threat. Common one, and you mentioned it at the beginning of our conversation, was like, we have to answer the phone all the time. We have to be on call 24/7. I actually don't believe that. It's a myth in the industry that you have to be on call 24/7 and you have to answer your phone the minute it rings or you're going to lose the business.
I think it's a mindset thing too, right?
Absolutely. Right. And then what's behind that mindset is fear, right? right? Our survival brain is wired for threat. Yeah. So most of our stress is fear-based. Fear of losing the sale, fear of not pleasing the customer, which means we lose the sale, which means we don't get paid, which means we lose our home, which means we end up under the bridge with the bottle of wine if we're lucky. Everything falls apart.
Mm-hmm. So Deb, then if, I love what you had said about being addicted to the stress. I think it spans across not even the real estate industry. It's kind of just how we operate these days. I'm curious, with your coaching clients, how do you get them into that zone of genius then, or zone of genius, or unaddicted to the stress that they're kind of thinking about on their own? How do you detach them from that?
Yeah, it's a big question, and it's a process of rewiring, retraining your brain. So if a little bit of neuroscience, I'm not going to go, any neuroscientists listening, I'm going to give the basics. So don't call in and say it's not true, or it's not complete. The way our brains work is we have these pathways, we have neural pathways. And so we learn at a very young age that this is how we stay safe. So I was diagnosed with exhaustion for the first time when I was 12 years old. So I learned somehow, even if you have great parents, somehow your little brain goes, this is the way to stay safe. And my brain decided that hyperachieving was the way to stay safe. And so there's this pathway that was created in my brain that I always follow that route. So in all of the works I've had. So when I finished my master's degree when I was teaching, and on Monday, I walked into the office of the coordinator and said, if you need somebody to teach this other philosophy program, I'm happy to do that. He goes, great. How soon can you go for training? And I was off doing that, right? So it was like, always from one thing to the next. And so somehow I took on the belief that to achieve and achieve more and keep achieving was the way for me to stay safe. And there's a neural pathway that's been formed. And I always say that, you can see, this is the camera, right? There's these deep neural pathways. It's like a ditch. And, you can create new pathways, but the old ones are always going to be there. So we got to make sure that we're creating pathways and we're creating rituals and routines that keep us out of the ditch and out of that old pathway. And sometimes it means quitting cold turkey. Like when I started working with my coach, she made me quit cold turkey all these certifications that I had signed up for.
Wow.
Because I had signed up for some pretty big things. And she's like, don't do it. Don't do it until you want to.
Not because
right
you
now,
have
my motivation was like, I have to. I will be worthy when I've done that.
It's almost like you're on autopilot or something and running your old mechanisms, which would be what you are conditioned for. It's actually very similar to have you ever heard of Dr. Joe Dispenza? He talks a lot about that as well.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of us doing this similar work, right? Like that's the cool thing is that we know so much more about our brains now than we knew 30 years ago. And it's great because it's become part of our common vernacular, right? Our speech, we talk about it. People are aware there's these pathways. And I like to compare it to like going to the gym, right? So you can go to the gym once and you'll feel good, but it won't change anything. And so when I'm working with my clients, I usually work with my clients for a year, some of them longer, and we're working at changing those little micro changes, right? Making those little micro changes so that they can make those adjustments. So if you're going to the gym, and here's an example, if you CrossFitters out there, right? So you're doing a clean and jerk. That's the only thing I can think of. It's been a long time since I did CrossFit. But you're doing this movement, your form is slightly off, you're going to be injuring yourself. So when you're working with a coach in that setting in the gym, just a slight adjustment can correct your posture. It can correct your muscles. It can help you actually become stronger. And it's very similar in my coaching practice and the work of like Joe Dispenza and other people who are doing this high level coaching. It's micro adjustments. And then another micro adjustment. And it's changing your language is so key, is changing your words. Your words, the words that you use will change your life.
It's like words of affirmation, you mean, that they're telling themselves?
Yes, that too. But I also have my clients, the first thing I do is delete the word should from their vocabulary.
I would imagine your clients come to you and they don't really exactly know what to pinpoint that they need to work on. So talk about your discovery process with your clients, because I'm thinking there's a lot to break down.
Yes. It is a big process, and it's I can give you a snapshot of it here, is that when people come to me, they often think they're coming because they're feeling overwhelmed, and they say they want more balance, or they're feeling burnt out, and I say, when someone comes to me for balance, I'm like, balance is not your problem.
And I don't really like the word balance.
Boundaries
anyways.
are?
I don't either.
Yeah, we need it.
Yeah.
Boundaries, that's a good one.
I gotta say, balance is not your problem.
Yeah.
Boundaries are, right? Because if you're not able to say no, that's when you feel out of balance. And we talked about this before on the phone, right? Like the balance. I like the idea of harmony better. I know you do too. But what's good to say about balance is, like, if it needs to be fluid, right? A lot of people are like, I want more balance. Like, it's a thing you can have. And it's like, I'm just going to go get some of that, and then my life's going to be fine. And balance is fluid. It's about a practice. Balance is your core, and it needs to
be centered.
So you need to be doing things that help you stay centered. And so that's another thing I do with my clients, is we create a practice for them. I am not the kind of coach that says, here's the one size fits all. And that's fine. It works for some people. It never worked for me. It's one of the reasons I was reluctant to become a coach, because I'm like, I can't do that. Right? So my coaching is very customized to the individual. We look at, what is it that you want to create? How are you getting in your own way? And let's address those things and take them apart one at a time and things start surfacing. And old stuff starts surfacing when you start peeling back the layers. Michelangelo, the great sculptor and painter, Sistine Chapel and Statue of David, he said about the statue, he says, the statue's already inside the rock. I just chip away at it.
Wow.
And I feel like that's what describes what I do as a coach, is I help my clients chip away at all the junk,
all the layers they've piled on themselves. Right.
When they started as young people, usually young children between 3 and 5, we start shaping these ideas about who we're supposed to be and who other people expect us to be. And we pile stuff on top of ourselves.
Do you find that you end up having to be like a psychologist or a counselor? Because I'm sure there's a lot of traumatic experiences that they had in the past that they're maybe incorporating into their everyday behaviors or workspace? Yeah,
so there's a line between coaching and therapy. There's a lot of similarities for sure. There's a wonderful book called The Choice by Dr. Edith Egar, and she's a psychotherapist. And she talks about how she coaches her clients, because there is that element of psychotherapy that's tied into coaching. I'm very aware that there's certain levels of trauma that I am not qualified to deal with. And I would refer people out if that's the case. But all of us have trauma of some sort. And it's usually self-imposed, right? Like we had an experience and we made it mean something about ourselves, right, to the point where we traumatized ourselves.
It becomes our identity.
Yes. Yeah. Right. So we can all look back to our childhood and say, this, I made this mean this about me, right? Or if, let's bring it into the context of real estate. I've seen this so often where, a deal doesn't come together and a realtor will beat themselves up and make it mean something about their performance. It's like, sometimes you do all you can and you just can't bring the people together. There's also a lot of realtors who I wish would take the time to grow their skill set, right? So I'm very holistic in my coaching. So it's like, let's deal with these stories you're telling yourself about why you need to be busy, your sense of self-worth and and a lot of it has to be tied to people's money story and guilt about making money even. Like you can be super successful and then feel really guilty about it because maybe your sister or your brother or your parents aren't as successful, and there's all that stuff that comes. And then there's this other side of like, where the teacher in me comes out. I'm like, okay, you got some skills you need to grow. Leadership is one of them. I said, if you signed up for real estate, you signed up to be a leader. And people often say to me, realtors will say to me, but I don't want to lead a team. I said, it's not about leading a team. It's about leading yourself. You are now self-employed.
Yes.
You have to be your boss. Do you want to be a good boss, or do you want to be a boss that like stresses out your employees, right? And usually people are stressing themselves out by cracking the whip on themselves. Like, I'm never good enough. I haven't done enough yet. I haven't got medallion. I need to do more. And there's this artificial reset every year in real estate where like the end of the year, like, oh, we're back at zero, right? Because we count our transactions and our income based on
annual
the calendar, right? And so, we mess with our own minds that way. And yet then there's this other part that we want to develop our skills as well. And, develop yourself as a leader, and which is learning the language of sales, learning the language of negotiation.
Yeah.
In my master's degree and my undergrad, I had a dual focus between literature and rhetorical studies. So this is why I geek out over words so much and the power of words, and why I think in my zone of genius is to do with teaching about words and identifying words. I'm a connector. And so I connect people and I connect dots, and I like, you said this here and you said that there, and look what that reveals about what's going on in your mindset.
Right.
So interesting.
Right? So the power of words. So let's draw boundaries. What are some powerful words a person or a realtor or high-performing leader can add to their vocabulary?
Yeah.
Can I start with the ones I want them to remove?
Yeah.
Totally.
I want them to take out should.
The negative, yes.
Take out should and replace it with could have, right?
Could have.
Oh, I should have done this.
Could have.
Right? Oh, I could have done this.
Okay.
Because notice the shift there. There's a distinction when I say I could have done this. It actually empowers me to be able to do it again in the future when the next circumstance comes up. Whereas I should have means I'm just judging myself as being wrong. It puts you back in the power position. The other one is but. Because but is so negative. And I go out of my way to say and. Yes, and. Yes, and. Because it opens up for possibility. But shuts things down. And I go out of my way when I'm typing an email to structure my sentences so that I don't use the word but.
Me too. I've been noticing that. I've been doing that too.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It makes a big difference in your mindset. It makes a big difference as a leader, how people are receiving your messaging.
Right.
And how you're guiding and leading them with the positive of and the possibility of the yes and.
How about what's your mantra for this year? Like, what are some positive words we can add? I know the pivoting seemed to be a really great word that everybody used last year. Together, community. What are some words you use and include into your daily rituals?
Mine change quite often. And I have a series of questions that I use. It's a technique called the wonder question. And I took it, I was inspired by The Big Leap. Gay Hendricks has a few of these, and I've actually written a ton of them. You can go to my Instagram at Deborah Stellingwerff, and there's wonder questions that are designed, the structure, like the syntax and the sentence structure. I'm going to be English teachery here. The grammatical structure of the sentence is designed to to elicit a yes response. And so quite simply to say, if you're wanting to shift out of feeling negative and exhausted all the time, you can ask yourself this question. And it's called the wonder question because there's a sense of curiosity and wonder that goes with it. So you go, I wonder, am I willing to increase the flow of positive energy in my life? And you notice how you can't say no to that.
Right.
Or if you can, then that's a place maybe some therapy needs to come in.
Curiosity and exploration.
Yes.
Self-exploration.
Yeah, because you open up possibility there. And, because I was a hyperachiever with everything, when I first started the personal development growth, I was like, I approached it the same way. I was like going to beat myself into submission. Okay. I'm like, okay, I love myself. I trust myself, and damn it, I'm going to just be really happy. Right. And I was really like putting a lot of pressure on myself. And then when I shifted into, am I willing to increase the flow of positive energy in my life? My energy started to shift. Possibility started to shift, because when I said yes to that, then throughout the day, my brain is looking for opportunities to be positive.
Yeah, and the word you're using, hyperachiever, it sounds like, to me, I feel like I'm in that category as well. But I also find one of my faults is that I want to add so many projects into my life, but I don't complete it at 100 or 200% the way I want it to. So it's completed at 90% the way I want it to.
Well, hyperachievers will often, it doesn't mean they're always doing stuff if you have the hyperachiever tendency, because sometimes hyperachievers will actually stop themselves from doing something because they can't do it to the 200% quality.
And it's exhausting.
Right?
I'm sometimes that one.
Yeah. So, and there's other things that factor in. So I'm also a positive intelligence certified coach, and that's where I take that term hyperachiever from.
Okay.
And in this model, there are 10 ways that we self-sabotage, and hyperachiever is one of them. It actually it's not as good as it sounds. When I did my assessment and I was identified as hyperachiever, I was like, yes, all right. And then I read it. I was like, we got hyperachiever, restless. I have restless too, because I'm like, where's the next shiny object, right? That's the not finishing, because you're like, okay, I'm bored now, let's move on. And this is one of the reasons I think I really love coaching and working with different people, right? And one of the things I loved about real estate was that I got to work with different people all the time, which is what I think a lot of realtors love, is like meeting lots of different people. And so there's restless, controller. And if you're a controller, like you have to control everything. I have a bit of a controller, so that's why it annoyed me when people were calling me during my dinner. Yeah. So, right? All of our gifts have a dark side. So, and all of these negativities, like the hyperachiever, that's the dark side. The good side is I actually achieve and I grow and I learn. But when I take that and I shift it into, or you shift it into, making it mean you're valuable only if you achieve a certain thing. That's when we get into the dark side, right? And that's where we're getting into survival brain instead of creativity. When we're coming at achieving from this place of curiosity and exploration and innovation, creativity and imagination, is such a different energy than if you're like, I have to do this. So like this podcast is a great example. You guys are clearly having fun with it. You're learning and growing, you're having fun, and it's bringing value to other people. And if you are doing it from a place like, we have to do this podcast because if we don't, then we're not going to be able to grow our businesses, and people aren't going to take us seriously. And it's just a different energy.
Yeah. Yeah, right? We don't have that at all, Tony.
Honestly, I was really looking forward to today. And Deborah, we were looking forward to having you on so much.
Thank you. This has been fun.
I want to be able to wrap this up maybe with one main question. Tony, do you want to ask Deborah a question about that maybe will resonate with you and what you're in your life? Because I know you're balancing like 2 kids in your life, and you're working full time.
Yeah, I actually feel like Deborah's kind of answered my question. And I think it was an aha moment for me this year as well, which I started doing differently. Something really important that you said was defining success on your own terms, because I resonate with the fact that you said whenever there's a higher commission income or whatever it is, it doesn't bring me that joy. Do you know what I mean? Like there's not a real payoff there. I've been finding joys in connecting on a higher level with my clients. And also success to me has been redefined such that it means I'm spending more time, present time, with my kids. I have a 6-month-old and a 6-year-old at home, and my husband and my parents. And it's creating those better boundaries around my family time my self-care time, which I've been so much better at this year. And it actually has been a lot more fulfilling when working with clients, because now I've boundaried kind of those up. So it's not really a question, but I think that, gosh, you just sound so knowledgeable in your coaching and on such a wide variety of levels. I'm sure that all of your coaching clients are seeing all the success that they would like to in their life and business.
Yeah, it's hugely satisfying for me when I see people transform and just by changing just a few things, right? It's really, it's not easy, but it's also not difficult.
So I have one question then. I do have one question.
Yeah.
For our listeners.
Yes.
If there was one thing that somebody could do in order to get into their genius zone, what would it be? I mean, I know that it's probably different on each person, but exploring that, what would you recommend to people to kind of stop living on autopilot?
You addressed it actually just now when you were sharing, was about learning how to set some boundaries, right? And setting boundaries for yourself is key. So I actually have, I want to make a comment about what you said, and then I have a special gift for your listeners.
Oh, amazing. Thank you.
Awesome.
So when you were talking about how you've found balance and that you don't find joy and that, like, the big commission check doesn't matter. And I know some of our listeners are going, oh, but I don't want to have to give up that success to have balance. Cause that's the myth out there, right?
Yeah.
Is you have to give it up. And I know that that's not what you were saying, but I also know that's how some people were filtering that, that you can experience balance and harmony in your life by setting boundaries, by really being extreme with your self-care, putting your oxygen mask on first so you can take care of yourself, then you have more to give others. And, and you're doing that and it's making a difference in your life. And it doesn't mean you have to give up those big commission checks and give up
I'm glad you said that.
The financial rewards of being in the business. Because there's a lot of people who believe, well, if I slow down, I'm actually going to lose.
So
and
I want to say one thing. Thank you for bringing that up, because you're right. I didn't mean it to come across that way, such that, that's not happening anymore. It's just that I needed more from my life and my business. And I'm thankful that I've been implementing those boundaries to make it happen.
Yeah, and when you're in that space, which some of our listeners might be, in that busyness, we filter it with I'm going to have to give that up. I'm going to have to give up that success in order to have the balance. And this is one of the reasons I went into coaching, was to help people, like, you don't have to give it up. The second best piece of advice that I got, which will answer your question, is from my first business coach, who said you need to slow down in order to speed up.
Yes.
That's the shortest answer I can give you for how to move into your zone, how to move into a place of more balance and creativity and innovation and ease and flow, is by slowing the F down. It's counterintuitive. We all feel like, if I slow down, everything's going to, like, all these plates I'm spinning are going to drop and crash to the ground.
It's a good reminder.
Slow down so you can speed up, because you will speed up. And you will grow your business if you just slow down enough to get some systems in place, get the support you need, learn the skills you need, change your mindset.
And add Deborah to your life.
Thank you. Thank you.
You said you had a gift for our listeners.
I do. So most of, as I said before, like, I usually work with my clients for a year or longer, and sometimes for 6 months. But I have just created a 5-lesson mini course called the Stellar Life Balance Bootcamp.
Oh,
and
that sounds exciting.
Yeah, and so I will give you guys the link. You can share it in the show notes.
Definitely.
So why I started the Stellar Life Project, it was originally a blog.
Yeah,
It actually started off as a blog where I was just, like, sharing what I was learning.
Yeah,
I thought that was going to satisfy me, that I could just share what I was learning on a blog, and then I wouldn't need to change careers. Well, it turns out that changing careers was actually really quite easy for me, because I was stepping into a place where I'm like, people in my life were like, of course you're doing that. Can I sign up?
Yeah.
Right.
You're in your zone of genius.
Yeah. And other people knew that. So it was actually been really easy for me to do that transition that took a couple of years. So but I thought it was going to take 3 years or 3 to 5 years. It actually took me one to like be able to build a big enough coaching practice to stop doing real estate because I'm in my zone.
Do you miss real estate?
Not at all. I don't at all. I mean, I miss like spying in other people's houses because I really love that. I love going into other people's houses and seeing how they're decorating and, looking in through windows. A little bit of a voyeur
You could
there,
watch
but,
HGTV for that.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
So
let's finish off with 10 rapid fire questions.
Okay. Cool.
Okay, and then we'll get to make sure that our listeners know how to find you as well.
Yeah, how they know how to find me and how to find the Balance Bootcamp. It's a free mini course that I offer so people can get a taste of it and give them something to work with.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, me too. I'll be your guinea pig.
Wonderful.
Describe yourself in 3 adjectives besides high achiever.
Okay. Happy, peaceful, grandmother.
Oh, congrats.
Thank you.
New grandmother?
Yes.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Super fun.
What's one ritual that you do to get into your genius zone?
I do yoga every single day without fail. I think in the last 5 years, I missed it once because my luggage was lost and I was in Berlin. And my yoga mat, I have this travel yoga mat, and the floor was kind of icky in the hotel we were in. So I'm like, I'm not doing it today.
Yeah.
But yoga is key for me. And I actually plug for Yoga with Adrienne. I do my yoga with Adrienne on YouTube channel. I actually subscribe to her community too, but she's great because you can do a 10-minute yoga or you can do an hour. Cool. So it's wonderful.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What's your word or mantra for 2021? I know you said it changes all the time, but maybe if you can give us one the last couple months and that will...
The last couple months I've been focusing on, I love myself.
Yes.
I accept myself. I approve of myself.
Love that.
Love that. Love it.
What or who is your teacher in life?
So many people come to mind. Wow. Brene Brown has had a huge impact on me. So I'm going to say that definitely read all her works. I've done some training with her organization as well as reading everything. It really
You're the second person today to mention her.
Yeah, she's made such a huge impact in the world. It's just incredible the change that she's making. And I'm so happy to have been able to train in her Dare to Lead program and be able to bring that. That's one of the modalities that I bring to my coaching clients.
What's the name of the coaching program that you took to become a coach or certified coach?
It's called CTI. So it's Coaches Training. It used to be called Coaches Training Institute. It's now called Coactive Training Institute because the model is coactive. Literally, I am not the guru. We do this together.
Right.
Right.
I have that book as well. Coactive.
Yeah. You have to do the work.
Yeah.
And I will walk beside you. I will shine the light in the dark places that you're, and help you take your blinders off. We have this saying in CTI that you can't see the label from inside the bottle. So that's what a coach does, is reads the label on the outside. It's like, hey, do you notice that this is your label? This is your programming. This is what's coming up for you and how this might be getting in your way. So, yeah.
What's your favorite place in the entire world?
Lake Chelan.
Ooh.
So
where's that?
It's in Washington. It's about half hour east of Wenatchee in the American side of the Okanagan. My family's been going there since I was a small child with our whole group of friends. We called the camping group. And it's all my parents' friends and all the kids, and now we all go, and my sisters and my parents and our kids, and now I have a grandson now who's a year old, and we all go there. And so we didn't get to go last year, and we're probably not going to get to go this year, but that is my favorite place on earth. I always tell people, I tell my family, like, when I die, can you just take my ashes and dump them in the middle of the lake there, because that's my favorite place on earth.
Amazing.
So lovely.
What is the best piece of advice that you've ever been given?
As I shared before, slow down to speed up and invest in yourself.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know you've mentioned so many books during the session, but what's your current read right now?
I just finished reading Louise Hay's You Can Heal Your Life. And I just she's like the grandmother of personal growth and personal development. And I I have the book, but I also listen to it. I listen to a lot of audiobooks because I'm a recovering perfectionist, a recovering hyperachiever. I still like to be on the move. So I like to listen to books while I walk. And her voice is so soothing and calming, and she's just wonderful. So yeah, I just finished that. I also recommend for all realtors listening, if you haven't read Chris Voss's Never Split the Difference.
That's a really good one.
That is if you only ever read one book to help you in your real estate career, that's it.
Yeah, we recently covered that in our book club as well. That was a good one. What is a dream that you have yet to achieve? This hyperachiever you.
I'm actually in this place where I'm like, I'm pretty good, right? And there's... I'm really happy with my life right now, and I don't feel like this need. Like, there's a bunch of things I'd like to do, but nothing that's feeling like, oh my gosh, I have to do that. Just really in this place of service. Oh, here it is. It's coming to me now. I just recently joined an organization called SheEO, and they're a wonderful Canadian organization. And the membership dues, you don't become a member, you become an activator. And you pay your fees, your dues every month, and that money goes into a fund that is a perpetual fund that loans money to women entrepreneurs.
Oh, that's so
They give them
cool.
a 5-year interest-free loan.
Oh, wow.
And so it's a great way for me to be a part of that community and be giving in a way that's going to help other women entrepreneurs.
It's like sponsorship.
Yeah,
almost.
it is, right? And so a bigger dream for me would be to actually do that at a higher level where it could be doing some angel investing.
You have something about your this energy or vibe that just has really calmed me in my seat for this session.
Oh, I'm so glad.
And you have beautiful eyes too.
Thank
I have
you.
to add that. So thank you, Deborah.
Thanks, Deborah.
This was
Thank you.
awesome. And I learned a lot about about myself. And you guys can find Deborah at stellarlifeproject.com. And we're looking forward to the bootcamp link.